Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and I'm here tonight with my friend Nate
How y'all doing?
and with Travis,
Hello.
and we are getting together tonight to talk about Robert E. Howard's poem "To Moderns." And as usual, before I go further, if you like my work, if you want to help support me, please go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great. You can go from $1 to $5 a month. And with that said, let's see. I'm gonna put the poem up on the screen, and I'll go ahead and read it tonight because it feels like it's been a while since I've been the reader on one of these talks. So let's see. Where do we got it? There we go. And let me know when that's visible.
What's up?
Okay. So, To Moderns by Robert E. Howard. Little poets, your star is growing dim. A wind is coming out of the east to rend you life from limb. Oh, you that sit in the rhymer's seat and prattle of little things, turn your faces from the gilded scroll and see what the black wind brings. Your verse is smooth as a windless brook, your words fall well in line. You have trimmed your accents carefully and polished them till they shine. Just so the workers in Babylon rubbed gem and gleaming ore, lit little lamps in the burnished hall, forgetting that rough stones hold the wall, till the riders swept on Babylon, and hell ran red before. Little poets, the people praise your rhymes. You sing of kisses and spring and love, the budding rose in the maiden's glove, like 1,000 tinkling chimes. But a great bell booms in the deadly east, where a fearsome people lurk, their shapes of doom in the gathering gloom, and monsters in the murk. Gods of all hells, can you not see, before it is too late, that rhyme is the speech of the grisly dark, the ghouls that haunt the gate? Oh, jingle your foolish, petty songs, jeer at the talon and tooth, till the portals break and the towers fall, and the terrible people nail you all to a cross of iron truth. What has the true rhyme to do with light, love, or a flower's smell? The poems that set the sky on fire were born in the pits of hell. Murder and madness, hate and lust, gibbering heresies. These are the tales that the poets tell of the seething brain in the rotting shell. Loose the abhorrent hordes of hell, then carve your poems in blood and rust, abysms and blasphemies. Woo! Okay, and now I gotta stop for a minute. Nate, would you like to start us off?
Too far, Bobby. Too far. I mean, I could see where you were going, and for a while we're fellow travelers, and then it's like, hold on, what? Monsters? Gibbering madness? Blasphemy? I'm going to stick back over here where we're still all speaking, speaking the speech of mortal men that does not drive you to madness and despair. Thanks, though. Had fun. You just do you, and I'm gonna, kind of camp out over here by the stones of the wall.
Well, I get what you're saying with a little too far. At the same time, though, like, you know exactly the kind of thing he's talking about. You know who he's yelling at, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Who is he yelling at? That's what I was curious about. Exactly.
Exactly
who?
I couldn't to say, but this whole idea of like this romantic poetry that's just like, oh, And like romantic in the sense of actually like rom-com romantic, not in the sense of like romance poetry talking like the Song of Roland or something. The actual like just love and flowers, love, flowers, spring, everything is nice, and we're not going to worry about the harder, darker side of things because we'll leave that to those nasty prose writers.
Well, and
when was this written? What era is he from?
So this would be early 20th century. Let's see, when did he die? Can find that out too.
5 minutes in this poem.
That's possible. Robert E. Howard died in 1936. So at his own hand. But which that part's not great. But there, when I saw this, it actually there's a word that occurred to me. There's a writer. Well, actually, he's been on here once. I think Nate. Were you on with Brian Niemeyer when we talked about Joseph McCarthy?
Yes.
Okay. There's a word he uses on his blog frequently. He talks about FemPub, which is basically that women have taken over book publishing, and not just and he says which that wouldn't necessarily be bad, but like not just women, but like women who have traded the idea of family for a career, and now want to market that terrible idea to other women to make them feel less terrible about the horrible mistakes they've made with their lives. What's the other term I've heard, which is I guess I shouldn't care about offending people who would be offended by this, but the other term I've heard is what the dead egg brigade.
Oof.
Yeah.
Size large.
And so he's talking about and you look at a lot of publishing today, and it's why don't little boys want to read? Why aren't they interested in books? Because the books you're giving them are A, awful, and B, so far as they're even passable, only little girls are interested in them. And it, just looking at this poem, and I haven't, it seems to me that the same thing happened significantly earlier with poetry than that has since happened with publishing in general. And I kind of think that's who he's talking about. So Travis, what did you have? What were you?
Well, so I would ask. So who are the moderns that he's addressing it to then?
Specific writers?
No, not like writers. Like I don't know. Like that's what was confusing to me, because it's like at times he's like writing it and he's like saying, you don't need rhyme, you don't need this, even though his whole poem is in it. And it's like, it felt like sometimes it was like he was putting down the people who write a more modern poetry without rhyme, without meter. There was one take that I had while I was reading through it. Like, is this what this is about? Because he's talking about rhyme and language. And then at the next sentence, it's like, well, he's kind of going against that. So I couldn't really make it out exactly what this is supposed to be about, honestly. And like, who are the little poets?
What he's really saying is that, he's coming after people who are writing pretty things for the sake of writing pretty things. Not to have anything to say necessarily, but just saying, oh, flowers are nice. Let's write a poem about flowers. And they say it in a very polished, very technically good way, sometimes even a witty, crafty way, but they're writing about stupid crap. And that's what he's upset about. Of course, he apparently wants them to write about horror and, violence, which is not unbalanced. Again, he's on the far other end of the scale, unbalanced that way. But in the end, you know, yes, just writing, pretty words about pretty things. Okay. If I want that much sweetness in my mouth, I'll bite a cake.
Well, and also, like where is it? What is it? Just so the workers in Babylon rub gem and gleaming ore, little lamps in the burnished hall, forgetting that rough stones hold the wall. And like, there's, there's the kind of the idea that like, if you're trying to build, if you're trying to protect something, you need to have hard, something hard on the outside. And if you're trying to build build and train men who will stand up and defend your civilization, you have to give them pictures of hard men standing up and defending civilization. And you can't do that if the only thing you're talking about is that sweetness and light and pretty flowers, unless the pretty flowers also have fangs and are trying to devour your children, which is that I don't think that's in any of the Conan. Wait, no, there was a horrifying carnivorous plant in one of the Conan stories. Okay, so he would be okay with including that kind of flower.
So, do you have any like specific history on what he's referring to in Babylon, or which period of Babylon, or which writers by any chance? I didn't look anything up. I just thought maybe you did.
I don't know about that. I mean, I just kind of took it as a great empire falling before barbarians. I don't really think you have to. I don't really think you have to get more specific than that.
I don't think he was aiming at a specific time in Babylonian history on that one. He was just saying that, yeah, he's kind of underscoring the idea that once an empire softens and gets more worried about the shinies than they are about about the hard and about the security and the toughness it takes to run an empire, then they're on their way out. They say that you could pretty easily chart the time when Rome started to decline by the time that legionnaires started wearing more comfortable boots.
That's interesting. It's not too surprising.
Speaking of,
Teddy Roosevelt has a great line that goes right along with that, and I can't think what it is right now. I'm not even going to try because I'd butcher it completely. But basically on that idea of, he was speaking specifically to the United States, and that basically the problem would come when we got soft. So,
well, that is the guy who what is it? That is the guy who got shot and then proceeded to immediately after go ahead and do the 90-minute speech that he was planning anyway. So, yeah, he would know something about not being too soft.
Well, I mean, he started off as like, a sickly asthmatic child, but the first thing that he beat half to death was his own body. Beat that into submission. The only thing he couldn't whoop out of himself was astigmatism. And so he was just like, I can do it. Y'all can do it. God's sake.
I'm trying to remember. There was something, I think it was about him in an article on crack.com a long time ago when they were still, yeah, back when the ratio of funny to social justice was like at least 7 or 8 to 1. Actually, at that point, I don't think there was any, and that really saddens me how that site just collapsed. But anyway, totally incidental. But there was a story about him that I was trying to remember, something about him like riding a horse to the point of like almost killing the thing to like deliver some kind of message. But what was Yeah, so like I said, I really kind of take this as like, and you see the same thing today in, publishing in general. There's it's the other thing I've seen, some authors complain about is that, like, romance writers won't, in terms of like marketing, like especially on Amazon, romance writers won't stay in the romance genre. They're writing stories that are clearly romance novels, but they're labeling it as like fantasy or, science fiction, and making it impossible for like actual fans of actual science fiction or fantasy to find what they want to read, um, because they're just, burying everything, which again is the, you could, diagnose as a symptom of FemPub. But yeah, and it's, the to take this to, Nate says, okay, he goes a little too far. I kind of see that there. At the same time, if you're doing corrective, sometimes you have to push it farther than you would otherwise. But like, the kind of healthy thing I see him talking about would be like, what was one of the ones we did? The Siege of Vienna Raised, like, a poem, or a poem about, a Christian army, delivering a city under siege, from Muslim invaders. And it's like, you know if you don't have these stories, if you don't pass them on, if you don't present these stories, to your children, you're not going to have a society for very long, because you aren't telling them there's anything to defend. And you know
See, he doesn't go there. It seems like he's just being gratuitous. He's like, I'm tired of seeing all this. I'm tired of seeing all this, pretty stuff. Where's my gag? I'm tired of seeing Barbies. Where's my gag? That's a that's a reference that you younger ones might not understand. But basically, it was this gooey, nasty, sticky crap that literally the whole thing you could do with is go and it would squeeze through your fingers and look gross. That's what we had as toys in the 90s. And so that's what he's looking for. Is he's like, I don't want pretty. I want nasty and grotesque. Not necessarily I want something that you can teach a lesson with. Yeah, he never really talks about that so much as that, I'm tired of seeing this write something interesting.
Yeah, I see. Oh, go ahead, Travis.
I was just like, with what you're saying there, like the line at the end of the next to last stanza, the poems that set the sky on fire were born in the pits of hell. And a friend just told me a quote by Jung, the psychologist or whatever, that says, if you want your branches to reach heaven, you must have roots that touch hell. So it just reminded me of that. It fits with that, and that kind of idea of what you're saying. Like, I don't know. I think I kind of lost my thought there, but I'll let somebody pick it up.
Well, okay. So there's one thing. One thing I was thinking of, in defense of Howard here, from G.K. Chesterton, which I wonder if they have this source there. I'll have to see. But anyway, it's a quote from him. Fairy tales do not tell children the dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children the dragons can be killed. And
That's a great line. I like that.
I like that very much.
I won't say he never goes wrong, but yeah, Chesterton is usually a good bet. And again, you have these stories of, and you can, read Robert E. Howard's own stories, and there's there's monsters and there's, sorcerers, and there's, also people fighting against this. Sometimes, in the case of Conan, usually for some kind of personal gain. Sometimes, in the case of Solomon Kane, because it's the right thing to do. And like you can't make that much out of a hero if they're not fighting a real monster. What was I don't remember who said that. I remember where I heard it from, but it was quoted from someone else. But without Goliath, David would just be a kid chucking rocks. And so like you have to have those kind of pictures. You have to have that kind of fear. You have to have that kind of adventure story to have a real example of a hero who is fighting that kind of thing. I don't know.
No, and I think that's good, and so those kind of stories I tend to appreciate. Like I've been kind of reading through my massive pile of Westerns just because it's, good to read stories about guys who are out there, one, doing things because they felt that's what ought to be done. And two, sometimes, some of the best stories are the ones where the character actually is kind of a scoundrel at first, or, a thug. And then he actually, comes out and says, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe now that I'm out here and I'm presented with this opportunity to go against my previous nature, if I take it in this new place, I can be a new man and I can leave behind me all my thuggery and, and catting. And I can actually, really be a man. And so a lot of times they do, sometimes they don't. And it's always a good story either way. Oh, and interestingly, one of my L'Amour books, because Louis L'Amour is easily my favorite Western author.
Good choice.
Actually, does actually have the extremely rare scenario where a town springs up around a stranger.
Okay.
Which story is that?
I forget the name of the story. I own the book. I'd have to find it. But basically, this con man is kind of stuck on the side of the road, but he makes up this he manages to sell to these travelers the idea that there's a gold mine waiting to strike, like right around the bend, that he had been working with a partner. His partner just died, and so y'all should stop here because he just needed people. And so he ends up creating a town out of whole cloth, but basically on fraud the whole way. But then he ends up having to defend it from people, from raiders, and do all this stuff. And he comes to really love his little fraudulent town, and he gets some really solid people around. He becomes a better man, and eventually does have to admit to the fraud.
Sounds a little bit.
So it's a L'Amour story.
Mm-hmm.
This is Louis L'Amour.
This is Louis L'Amour.
I never read that.
I can't for the life remember the book. Yeah, the town, he calls it Red Horse because this very savvy girl who's onto him from the start is like, oh really? What's the town called? And he's like, and he looks over his shoulder and sees like a big roan horse, and he's like, Red Horse. She was
Fallon?
like, Fallon. I think that might be it.
So, was a stranger to the town. I was unfortunately a stranger to the horse. Where is it?
Well, I think what's interesting is that we've come up with, we're talking about story and heroes and monsters, and then we go to the story of a man who sells a story in order to start a town. Like he sold the story really well. He was a good writer.
Yeah.
This Fallon guy.
But he, like I said, he does. As I said, he he did it really well. But what's funny is the story he told to sell this fraud was the story of flowers and happy and woohoo woohoo, this is nice, gold gold gold, yay, we'll all be rich.
Right. Which is
Except for he was full of crap.
right. Well,
Like
but most of them are. I mean, the whole story of El Dorado from the time that the conquistadors got to South America, there was this El Dorado out there. There was this story, this fantasy, and everybody kept looking for it. And it kind of helped propel exploration because they were going looking for gold. It's this.
That is true.
What is gold? Gold's just a story in our heads. Like, it really is. I mean, it is a mineral in the ground, but it is a meaningless mineral except for the meaning that we have given it.
You're absolutely right. And so in the end, most of the endeavors that we go on, for riches or whatever, is a con game we play on ourselves to motivate. So that's another place where Howard kind of falls short on this one, is that sometimes the pretty words and like the sweet thing is, it does have its value. But like any sweet thing, too much leaves you sick.
Yeah, and I suspect if he was here and we could ask him, he would say, "No, I don't want that to not exist. I don't want none of that. I just want people to be doing something else as well." What was two things. One, I just found out that Louis L'Amour apparently has written some poetry. So
yes, I have his books of poetry.
Oh, I might have to borrow one of those then, because I might have to see.
I've got Smoke from This Altar.
Okay.
Which I need to finish reading the poems they're in. I think I've read 4 or 5 of them. I was like, these are all right.
Yeah, because that actually sounds like that could be a good match for some of the things I look for this channel. Another thing, which which I just thought of a minute ago. Howard's tone here actually reminds me a little bit of something from the book of Jeremiah, when he's talking about the false prophets, the leaders who are destroying the nation of Israel, and he says this is in Jeremiah chapter 6. He says, "They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace," they say, when there is no peace. And it's like, just everything's sweet, everything's happy. There's nothing to worry about. There's no bad people. There's no bad people out there who want to hurt you. And so we should just let everyone in our country, because it'll all be smiles and friendship. And for that matter, there's no dangerous diseases that might come from another place on Earth that might threaten your people.
I would say cough cough, hint hint, but I don't want to lose viewers.
Well,
I'll just say hint hint.
As far as we know, COVID is not a computer virus, so they can't get it from listening to us through YouTube.
You'll get other problems listening to us on YouTube.
But what was let's see. But yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of idea. Like, why are you talking all this? Why is there all this happy talk? Why is why is this nothing but flower petals and sunshine? There are real problems out there that need to be confronted. And there's a real wall that needs to be built to defend your people from the barbarians. And yeah, I'm with him on that part, definitely.
Well, yeah. I said, I think, usually we find ourselves in pretty uniform agreement with the authors in some of these poems. And this one, I've got a couple of bones to pick with them. But overall, I understand, and I have felt that way before. when I was a kid, like we'd be like, all right, and we're going to do our unit on poetry, and when I was in school, I'd always be like, ugh. But then they let me pick my own poems, and I found like some Viking stuff, and guys talking about like I skated the frozen fjords as a youth, and with my childish hand I tamed the wild falcon. I've slain my enemies. I've bedded my women. It's like, and it's like I was a hard man in life, and now that I'm dying, there's no one to sing a song about me. So you're gonna do it. I was like, yes, poems.
And that's the kind of thing I'm trying to bring back a little bit with this channel. Not the only thing, but like there's really a lot more. There's really a lot more out there than you were taught about in your English class. Please don't
Well,
write it all off.
that's largely because of FemTeach. We've all been instructed halfway to death.
We've all been what?
We've all been instructed halfway to death as children. They kept trying to teach me not to punch people, but I never had the patience for it. I failed that class. I'm trying to teach my kids not to punch people without reason. It's just little kids are like, oh, hey, cool. Knocked out my kid.
Giving a visceral illustration there.
That's right.
Well, I think it's interesting the line where he says, "Gods of all hells, can you not see before it is too late that rhyme is the speech of the grisly dark, the ghouls that haunt the gate." I mean, he's actually like, I don't know. That's a pretty strong statement. I mean, he's actually saying against rhyme. I mean, he's saying against poets. But it's interesting to me that the time that he wrote would have been the start of kind of moving away from rhyme and meter and more into disordered poetry, I would say.
He's not condemning rhyme there. He's saying like these are the things you should be talking about. These are the things we should be writing poems about.
When he's saying rhyme is the speech of the grisly dark, I'm not sure if I'm following you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I go with that one either. I said, I don't understand where he's coming from with that. Then again, I tend to find most tools to be neutral. If it's something that a man uses, he can use it.
Right, that's a good point.
For light, for dark, for good, for ill, whatever. So again, just going to pick that bone real quick and say that I think he's wrong. Rhyme is rhyme. You can, rhyme as the angels do, or you can rhyme in the speech of dragons. But either one is how you use it, but it itself doesn't, once you drop it, it doesn't keep that stigma. The sword that is used to, to slay the children can also be the sword that, defends the next bunch.
This was your father's lightsaber. He used it to slaughter a bunch of kindergartners.
And you're going to do the same to him with it. So, yeah, like I said, once you lay down a tool, there's no more intent in the tool. What you did with the tool does not stain the tool. So, again, rhyme is not, all about, rhyme does not in and of itself contain flowers and cupcakes and puppies and, shy little girl kisses. But also, rhyme does not in and of itself contain, demons and zombies and madness. So, like I said, I could just feel the frustration in that phrase, but still too far. You got to get a little bit of elevation out of your sights there, buddy. You're shooting high.
Well, it's kind of funny because one thing that struck me as kind of ironic about this poem.
The one was made of iron.
Yes, that too. But what is it? it's like I look at some of the things that are being presented as poetry today, and we have the gibbering heresies and the blasphemies, and it's still unutterably boring. There's I was just poking around like one day to see who else was like talking about poetry on YouTube, and I happened across this one this one channel, and like there was this one where it what is it? It was just one person doing there's a this one it was this poem, and it was there's a turf on my shoulder, TERF. I don't know if either of you know what that acronym is.
No.
Yeah. Well,
no, I'm just gonna like roll an eyeball so hard I detach a retina.
You can be assured if there's an acronym, I don't know what it is.
But it's
That's football.
I do know that one.
It's supposed to be trans exclusionary radical feminist, and so it's feminists who are insane, but they're not so insane that they're going to call a man a woman. And so this guy who was pretending that he's a woman was up on stage doing a poem about how he kind of hears this voice of critique about how he's not really a woman, which he's not, because he's a man.
That's called.
He hears
logic.
a voice of critique in his own mind. You mean this is like a play, or I'm missing it? Maybe.
Essentially, his shoulder angel is just actual biological facts.
And so,
that's rudimentary right there, guys. I got beyond that a long time ago. I still have to worry about things that matter.
Like I said, we have gibbering heresies and blasphemies, and it's still boring and stupid, which is impressive in an awful kind of way.
It's not. I mean,
well, the thing is that they gave up doing what the Babylonians did in the poem, which is they could at least polish this turd. Mythbusters showed you could do it.
So the best line in the poem, the line that I feel like I need to write down somewhere, is the next to last line. And if you just I chuck the first word, but carve your poems in blood and rust. That's a great line.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like, seriously, how much easier would it be to get guys in high school to read? Let's take you back to high school. Let's take you back to high school and put Solomon Kane, the one black stain, in front of you. Would you have maybe been a bit more enthusiastic about poetry when one of them was, a guy, breaking out of prison, strangling his guard, and sneaking across the ship at night to avenge an unjust execution?
Yeah, I would have definitely been more on board with that. I mean, you read all these just so stories and you're like, okay, I never want to read anything ever again. Like, I myself greatly enjoyed Hamlet because it was me and two other guys in the gifted program reading it, and so we got to talk about it at like a deeper level, and it was great because dudes are getting stabbed, people are dying, there's intrigue, things are tense the whole way through. And it's like, yeah, all right, this is balling. This is crazy good stuff. But then another time I had to read The Old Man in the Freaking Sea. and I wanted to go drown myself in the sea, be the young man in the sea, and it was a very short book.
You didn't
Had to
like the old man in the sea? I'm sorry. Continue. Finish your bit.
look, man. I've been fishing. That is a trash trip. All right. It should have been, it should have been, like Papa Boudreaux in the bayou. And then there'd at least been alligators. But the problem doesn't even really show up until the last part of the book when the sharks eat his freaking fish. Spoilers, by the way, everyone. And he literally sits there and hangs on to one line and goes, "Yep, getting dragged around the Gulf by this fish. Guess I'm here for the long haul." I mean, good job, old man. Primo. But and then I had to read Catcher in the Rye, and I'm giving my report on this book, and I was so unmoved I couldn't even remember the guy's name. I literally called him for halftime. I was like the protagonist. And then I remembered like 3/4 of the way through his name was Holden, some stupid thing or another. Caulfield. Yes. But I finally remember his name was Holden, so I threw that in there, just sort of as an aside so the teacher wouldn't think I'd forgotten his name this whole previous time going. And my teacher looked aghast when I said the only part of the book that I actually enjoyed is when he got beat up by the pimp.
I actually, I don't know how, but somehow I managed to avoid reading that the entire way through my formal education. I didn't try. Okay, yeah, I've heard a few people since whose tastes I kind of respect say that it's not really that great.
Basically, teenager whining for 200 and something pages. Just, you're all phonies. You're all phonies. Yes, child. It's called maturity. Go get you some. We don't all get to just sit here and lay around and do whatever we want and say whatever we want, because you know what? We have responsibilities. And some of those times it means we have to suppress how we really feel and be, quote, phony. You moron. Grow up. Get a job.
I think I think the main character of that I think from what I've heard he fits what Vox Day calls a gamma. So, but
so I take it, Trent, you enjoyed The Old Man in the Sea?
I did enjoy The Old Man in the Sea. It's been a long time since I read it, but I recall enjoying it quite a bit.
I liked it also. I've only read it once and it's been over 10 years. I might try it again. I do see why. I don't know.
Can't help. I can't help but be like, okay, dude, if you're going fishing, have the kind of equipment that doesn't take 3 or 4 days to land the fish. And I get it. I said, I understand the themes and all of that. Just
yeah.
There are 2 pages worth of things happening in that whole book.
Oh God, there's one there's one I started when I was like 26 or 27. It was what's the book? Foucault's Pendulum. It's Foucault's Pendulum is the title. I can't remember the author right now. And the first 10 or maybe 20 pages is a guy standing in a museum thinking. That is it. Like literally nothing has happened. Nothing has actually happened by 20 pages in. And I'm like, I like to read. I am not like completely ADD, but for God's sake, have something happen.
And then there's, Jim Butcher, where the opening line is, "The building is on fire. It's not my fault." Which is the greatest opening line in any book ever. It just can't be beaten.
Great book. Who is that?
Jim Butcher. It was which one was that? That was the one with the dogs.
That's one. This is one of the early ones this is one where he gets mouse. Don't remember
Yeah.
what it's called. It was good.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I want to say that one was Blood Rights. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
But
We have strayed badly from the point.
yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
As we do.
As I usually say, I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to say about this poem. Nate, anything more you wanted to cover?
I'm sure I could find more bones to pick. Conceptually, conceptually, I agree. On the execution, again, reel that in a bit, fella. Unlike that old man and that freaking fish.
So I want to come back to the title. You know, he addresses it to moderns. Do you have a sense of what he's saying there, speaking to? I mean, is he basically
the people that are writing poetry contemporarily with him?
The intellectuals of the day, basically.
Yeah.
Intellectuals, academics of the day.
Yes.
I have a modern parallel that I just realized, and I love it. I love it so much. This is the 1920s poetry version of The Hook by Blues Traveler, in which he decries the fallen pop, pop media state of his chosen genre, and basically says that we should burn it all down, and he hates it, and he's not going to stand for it anymore. Also, that's a great song. Y'all should give it a listen because the lyrics are like, okay. And basically he's sort of subverting the point, and what he's saying and what Blues Traveler is saying in the song is that, I can say whatever I want to say as long as it sounds right to you. And I have a catchy little bit that'll recapture your liking of the song, no matter what it is I'm talking about. And it's just really great. Listen to that song now.
I'll have to pull that one up
Also,
after
harmonica solos.
Okay. Well, I think we covered this one pretty well, and as usual, covered
or not well at all. But everything around it, yeah, I think we've done okay.
It was kind of a shotgun thing. It just the general area was hit by the
volley fire.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight, and God be with you.
And with you.
Cheers.